He's asking, is the HDB actually an asset or a liability?
You mean the flat, right? Not the stat board.
The flat. Yeah.
Just
Owning a flat in Singapore.
Sorry, lawyer. we need to know exactly what question we're answering.
Are you also still waiting for your BTO? This is your daily catch-up. So today's episode is sponsored by the Ministry of National Development, and as you can see, it's a very special day because we have our very first female minister here with us, Minister Indranee Rajah.
Let's go!
Hi. Minister Indranee is the current leader of the House, second Minister for National Development, Minister in the Prime Minister's Office, and second Minister for Finance, which makes her the perfect person to answer our burning questions about housing affordability, accessibility, and land costs. Welcome to the show!
Welcome to the show!
Thank you guys.
So she might be a bit shocked by this loud intro. So maybe let's get to know Minister Indranee a bit more before we move on. So Dan has a question for you.
No, firstly, because I think leader of the house, right? That's such a big title. What does that actually mean?
It's actually just another name for head prefect.
Oh.
Yeah, just
Nice.
make sure everybody follows the rules. That's what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
And be there on time to do it.
Is there like a WhatsApp chat? Then you're the admin of it, and then you just tell them, "Hey, hurry up, lah! Come on, you're late already. 5 minutes late."
There are many where you have to track them down.
Wow.
Wow.
I can only imagine the amount of WhatsApp chats.
Yeah.
So before you got into politics, right, you were actually working in law. And why did you choose to enter that profession?
Accident. Pure accident.
Ooh.
Because when I was applying for university, I looked at all the list of courses and I was like, okay, this one cannot do. I was from arts. So all the sciences would have been a bit too, don't have the base subjects, right? And then I looked at this one and said, don't like. Then this one, not very near the canteen. So,
Important.
and then I actually ended up applying for arts because I thought that had a wider range. Then on the very same day that I put in my application, I came back home and there was a family friend having dinner with us. And he said, why don't you do law? Because he was a lawyer, of course. Why don't you do law? Because then you can do many of the things that you could do with the arts degree, but you also have an additional one which gives you an entrance to a profession. So since I really didn't know what I wanted to do, that's the reason why I thought, okay, maybe good idea. So the next day was a big load of hassle because I had to go down to the university, withdraw my application, put in the new application, got lost in the law faculty, wandered into the room where, there was this bunch of guys rehearsing for a competition. And later on, many years later, that turned out to be like my boss, Davinder Singh. Stephen Chong, Justice of Appeal, VK Rajah, former Attorney General.
Oh, wow.
And Jimmy Yim, Head of Litigation at Daren Khek. So it's like 20 fortuitous. I wandered into that room where there were these guys who at that time I had no idea who they were, what they were doing.
Yeah.
And many years later ended up working with many of them.
They were rehearsing for a mock trial, is it?
They were rehearsing for the Jessup Moods in the US.
Yes, okay.
So
Because when you
fun.
said stumble upon a bunch of guys rehearsing, I immediately thought dance competition.
No, dance wasn't their forte. Much better at law, yeah.
I'd rather be good at law than dance. Yeah. If I had to pick one. But it turns out you were a pretty good lawyer. That came out wrong.
That's kind of you to say so.
I'm wondering if I could just take this opportunity to ask you some lawyer jokes.
I thought you want to do moot courts.
Okay. At your own peril, am I at?
Yeah. Tell me if you heard this before. Yeah. But what do you call a chicken who got a law degree?
Okay, I think the correct answer is I don't know, right? So they'll let you deliver your
A
line.
legal tender.
A legal what?
A legal tender.
A chicken tender.
Yeah. That's a joke. I got two more.
Wow, I hope it's in order.
Okay,
What clothes do lawyers wear to court?
tell me.
A lawsuit.
That's just so
I hope you
bad.
didn't write this.
One more. Okay. Do you hear about the guy who sued an airline for his lost luggage?
No?
He lost the case.
That one not bad. That one not bad.
How long do you work with this guy?
He's new.
I'm on probation.
Okay,
I'm still on probation.
all right.
How did you then make the switch from law into politics? What interested you to begin with?
I guess it wasn't so much of me thinking of wanting a political career. It just so happened that at that time, PP was looking for single women candidates because there was a growing constituency of single women, and they figured that it would be good to have, more women candidates and some single women candidates as well, because they wanted to have a more representative voice. So that's how I sort of stumbled into politics.
So on that note, right, you actually worked with Mr. Lee Kuan Yew for quite a few years, right? What was that
in his
like?
constituency. It was pretty awesome, because his whole vision of Singapore dates back to the time of independence and all the things that you would have done in between, right? Oh. So listening to him and speaking to him, you have a very, very different perspective from somebody who comes into it much later on and only has a certain viewpoint. But he was able to tell you the history of it, the reason why, and just give you a very different look through his lens. One of the things that he would always say was that it was very important to know what your residents' circumstances are. So he related the story of how when he was an MP, he used to do his house visits. He would go to the homes. Sometimes he would just ask if, he could just look into the fridge, for example, because that also told him what their circumstances were like, whether they were okay. Because remember, we were much poorer then. I mean, nowadays you probably wouldn't do that. But it just illustrated to me his very keen interest on wanting to know how his residents were. Same thing during the SARS period. That was back in 2002, 2003, right? Yeah. I remember that particularly he was very concerned about the taxi drivers because their livelihood would have been affected at that time. Right. In the recent pandemic, we saw how it affected now the Grab drivers and so on. But, it just struck me that for all the big policies and everything, his heart very much remained with the common man and woman.
Wow. But imagine Mr. Lee Kuan Yew showing up and say, hey, open your fridge.
But don't forget, in those days, not many people even had fridges. Don't forget. So it was a different era, but he was just trying to find, out what the circumstances would be like.
Yeah.
As a minister, right, and working in so many ministries, right, what was that like? Because if you are holding many different positions at the moment, then at what point in your day do you divide your attention which way, There
are different portfolios, but one of the things you have to remember about government is that a lot of things are linked.
Right.
So if you are in Ministry of Finance, it basically touches every other ministry because you allocate the budget. So other ministries have to work with us. But if you're working at MND, you also have to think about how that impacts on families. And I'm under Prime Minister's office. I deal with national population as well as marriage and parenthood. So you then have to look and see whether we, there are enough flats for married couples, for first-timers, things like that.
It's all connected.
So it is all connected.
But do you have hobbies outside of work then?
I think sleep is a great activity to have.
Agree.
It's in very short supply nowadays. So yeah, sleep's good.
But if not sleep,
Jared,
I just want to find activity.
Okay, nothing to do with his wife really at this point.
I run, go jogging. Again, simply because that's something which I can do own time, own target. If you're playing team sports, then you have to make sure everybody else's schedule, syncs with yours. So running allows me to do it at pretty much any time.
A bit of me time as well.
Yeah, that's right. Reading as and when I can get it. Netflix as and when it's possible.
What are you watching?
Netflix recommendation.
I knew that would happen.
At the moment, Money Heist.
Oh.
Nice.
You never watch Physical 100?
No.
That's the current trend because all the men shirtless. Okay, moving on. Anyway.
Remember I said sleep. Sleep is a priority. Yeah?
Sleep over shirtless men. This is the current ranking. What would you say is a day in your life working in the MND? And specific to your role or what you are taking care of?
A day in life would actually not be working at MND. Day in life would be for example, going to MND, then after that rushing down to MOF, then after that going out for a meeting, and then coming out to do the meet the people session at night.
We meet the people is every day.
So mine's every Monday except for public holidays.
I actually had a friend that volunteered at your meet the people session.
Oh, okay.
Alicia, hi Alicia, if you remember.
Okay.
I remember being quite impressed because she said that the meet the people session can go until 1, 2 a.m. and then you will stay all the way also.
I mean, I stay for as long as it takes, depending on whether the resident would like to see me or not. So some days are shorter than others. Sometimes it really depends on the problem. You have the straightforward ones are speeding fines, littering fines. But
Oh, I
sometimes
didn't know people go meet the people for that.
So people literally say like, please help me appeal for my speeding fine.
yes, they do. It's up to the agency to assess the merits of the appeal. Some have really, really good reasons.
She's trying to get
some
because
have not.
Dan's eyes are a bit sus right now.
This is a YouTube series waiting to happen. You know, like the old judge that always like listens to like speeding fines in New York or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. But some have more complicated issues. For example, they may have legal issues. It really depends. They run into regulatory problems. And not all know where to find assistance. So, yeah.
What are some things that MND does, right, that people might not realize that they do or that they take care of?
The MND family is actually really large. So everybody obviously thinks of MND in association with HDB, which is one of the agencies. It's a step board under MND, so our housing program. But NParks is also under MND.
Oh.
So don't forget NParks, all of the parks. And during the circuit breaker and during the COVID period, it was all those park connectors and the parks that kept people mentally, healthy, sane. They had their green.
True.
So NParks really came to the fore during that period.
There's URA as well, right?
There's URA, which does the planning for the city. Then there's BCA, which is really building and construction. And then there's also the real estate agents.
CEA.
Yeah. And then now under a division of NParks, you also have cats, dogs, and animals.
Oh.
the old ABA.
Thank you so much for building the dog runs in the parks. I personally benefited from that.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of having dog runs where it's possible, because I think it's important for the dogs to be able to have space and for their owners to be able to have somewhere to take them, because sometimes the owners end up taking them to other places where there are people who are not very comfortable with animals, right? Then that's not a great idea. So it's good to have the right spaces for the right activities.
Wait, you have a dog?
She won me over already.
What breed of dog do you have?
I got Singapore Special.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yes,
You're also winning people over.
Yeah.
Dog not
Yes.
I
shop.
always thought NParks was under NEA. Learned something new today.
Okay, so like home ownership and public housing affordability, accessibility has been a very hot topic recently.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different views that people are arguing, and there's a lot of general anxiety over it. So while we have you here with us today, we thought we might pull up some comments that we found on the interwebs
Okay, all right.
and get your help to clarify them lah.
Okay.
Yeah. So our very first comment is by Mr. Edward Lam Xian Ming 3430 from 1 month ago. Hello. So he's asking, is the HDB actually an asset or a liability?
You mean the flat, right? Not the stat board.
The flat. Yeah.
Just checking.
Only a flat in Singapore.
Sorry, lawyer. We need to know exactly what question we're answering.
Because in Singapore, it's important for every Singaporean to have a home, but at the same time, having to pay so much, right, makes it very difficult for us. So tell me more. Stop right there. Like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below. How much did you get your HDB for? Back to the episode.
Remember when we started out as a country, right?
Well, I don't remember. So.
Okay, you don't, I do. But people didn't have homes. And that was the whole reason for having HDB, to build homes for Singaporeans. The primary objective is home ownership. We wanted and still want people to have a roof over their heads. But more than that, home is not just a physical place. It's where you grow up. It's where your family is. There's a whole lot of emotional connections with home. And there's also your societal links. Because, it's the coffee shop downstairs. It's the auntie and uncle at the hawker center nearby. HDB, primarily it's a home. But because it's also property, it does appreciate in value, at least in the initial period. That's the common trajectory of property. So home ownership is first and primary reason. There will be those who find that for whatever reason they have to sell their flat at a certain stage. If it's certainly in the earlier years of that 99-year lease, in most times you will find that it appreciates, in which case you also get to realize the asset appreciation. But if the question is, should you buy HDB just as an asset for flipping or for speculation or pure investment, that's not its primary reason.
Yeah.
The appreciation is a benefit that comes along the way, and like all benefits should be used wisely. And then towards the end of that 99 years, when you get older, you can actually also monetize it. under the lease buyback scheme, for example. There are many ways in which the property can benefit you along the trajectory of your life, but it's really meant to provide you with stability, that emotional security, and knowing that you have a place to stay and a place to call home.
Yeah. I actually just read about this lease buyback scheme on the way to work today. So apparently you can...
Overly honest,
Yeah,
Jared.
I didn't know this, but you could actually sell the remaining... Am I understanding this correct? You can sell back your some remaining years of
That's
your
right.
lease back,
That's right.
and then it will help you in your retirement.
That's right. So basically, you see, sometimes the lease will extend way beyond your estimated lifetime. So HDB calculates or helps you to calculate up to about age 95. And any tenure of your lease beyond what that age would be, they'll buy back.
Yeah.
That part of that lease which you don't think you would need, you sell back to HDB. In other words, you're monetizing it, then you get the cash and then you can use it for other things.
Why is there even a need for like a limit?
A limit on?
The 99 years. Like, why doesn't it just be a freehold?
We have 99-year leases. Why? Because at the end of 99 years, it comes back to the state so that we can build afresh and anew and rejuvenate. Because if you don't have a finite term of the lease, it means that whoever bought holds onto it forever. And then the land is out of the hands of the state. And then other new homeowners can't come into the picture. So what we do is we give a long lease, like 99 years, which is more than enough time for a person's lifetime. In fact, 2 generations or slightly over 2 generations can stay in that flat. But at the end of it, it comes back. And then we can build afresh and anew, because the things that we need to build in 99 years' time will be very different from the things we need today. Building will be different, needs will be different. You really don't know, there was a time, right, when we were talking about electric cars as something way off in the future and like it's the stuff of science fiction. But it's now going to become a reality, and we're aiming to go, electric for cars by 2030, right? So you really don't know. In 2050, it might be, air taxis. If all the land is no longer in the state hands, the state doesn't have the ability to rejuvenate, to build new public infrastructure, etc. So that's why it's 99 years.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So, like, if a homeowner reaches that 99-year point and has to return that land, do they get any form of monetization back, like any monies for that, for the home?
Not at that point, but the monetization could well have taken place in the earlier portion.
Understood.
Because when you first buy, especially when you buy direct from government, very heavily subsidized. So when you sell after the MOP of 5 years, you will get an uplift, right? So at that point, you also get a surplus out of it. So you've monetized at that stage. And then if, let's say, you hang on to that and later on you do the lease buyback scheme or one of the other schemes, you also monetize there. But at the 99 years, then obviously you've lived that duration of the lease and it comes to its natural end. So when you buy at the beginning 99, everybody knows it's 99 and it comes to an end. The question is what you do with it in between.
Understood. So there's enough like schemes or like mechanisms for you to be able to
monetize
it
along the way.
early enough.
But bearing in mind that the primary purpose should be a home.
Of course. It's not understood.
So on that topic of like monetization or investment, something else that we're seeing a lot recently in the headlines, right, is that normal homes, just HDBs out there, are being sold for $1 million, higher than $1 million.
You must be so annoyed by those headlines, right? Because they really skew the expectations of people.
They do, and they've had the effect of frightening people and making people worried, making people think that all resale flats are like that, and not only that, making them think that BTO flats are like that, whereas actually it's not the case. The $1 million flats and over actually comprise about 1% of resale.
Of all transactions.
Of resale transactions.
But because every time it's sold, then it's the headline. Then
Every time it's there in the headline,
It's overrepresented.
then people start feeling, I can't afford $1 million. I won't be able to afford a resale flat. Then very soon it becomes, I won't be able to afford a BTO flat, whereas that's not in fact the case.
Right.
So BTO, direct from government, heavily subsidized, very generous subsidies. Resale, only 1% of the transactions are over $1 million.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Like,
So it's a bit of sensationalism going on in terms of like...
It is.
clickbait.
I mean, it doesn't really make a headline to say resale flat went for like $400,000.
Man buys
$200,000. Yeah, that's right. Man buys house. It's not a great headline, right? What $1 million? Yes, but that unfortunately skews the perception.
But we still have a lot of comments about flats in general becoming way more expensive, especially in the last 2 years where there's a short supply of the BTOs, right? So is that a problem that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, so let me just break it down. There's BTOs and then you've got resale. So BTOs, actually the prices have been stable over the last few years. And they've been stable because we've been able to set the price, and when we price it, we price according to affordability, and we've kept the prices affordable. There will be a difference between mature and non-mature estates. We can get into that later. But I just wanted to say that for BTOs, they've largely been stable and the prices have not increased significantly. But then you have resale. Resale was a different story because what happened was COVID. Our housing program was on track. We were building a certain number of flats every year. Then COVID came along. Then you remember how we had to close the dorms? Means that the construction workers couldn't come out. Also means that new ones couldn't come in. So the whole housing program got delayed. The schedule was set back. What that meant was fewer BTOs entering the supply. Then those who wanted BTOs and couldn't get BTOs would start to look at the resale market. So that started to drive up demand in resale. And then what was happening simultaneously was that there were private property downgraders who sold their private property and were buying resale. So imagine if you sell your private property at 3 million or 4 million, you can afford the 1 million now. And you know, and so that entered the picture as well. And at the same time, there was another thing that was happening. It's been happening over a number of years, but we definitely saw an increase in the last few years where the family units are getting smaller.
Yep.
In the past, you get, the parents and the children and their children living all together. But I think increasingly people want their own privacy and their own space. So that added to it as well. It's like the perfect storm as far as the resale market was concerned, where the demand was really, very high, and that was what was driving up the prices. So we put in some cooling measures. It's had some impact, but really the key is bringing the BTOs back on stream. And as you can see, newspapers reported the other time, the number of flats that were behind schedule has been brought down from 90% to 40%.
Okay.
So we're back on track, and we're ramping up. So hopefully it will stabilize after a while.
So question 2 actually kind of ties into what we've mentioned a bit about like the HDB flats increasing in value over the years. So this person says HDB flats should never be allowed for speculation or investment. There is a need to de-link HDB flats from property speculators, force all the so-called upgraders to sell their HDB flats if they want to buy private, and don't allow people to buy private at the same time rent out their HDB. So like a lot of people are saying that like they are buying the HDB, not even staying in the HDB, and just using it for investment as the value maybe like doubles over the next 5-10 years, right? And then this spoils the market for families that actually need the house. So why are there not more tighter regulations around this?
Okay, we have quite a lot of regulations already. In fact, the HDB rule book is really, really, really big. But when it comes to the question of selling and so on, initially you couldn't sell HDB flats. I don't know whether you... Again, probably before you were born.
Wait, so what happens if I want to move out? I'm just stuck.
That would have been the case. And that was what led to a policy change, because we realized that people actually do have good reasons for wanting to sell. Some might be because your family size changes and you had a 3-room flat, now you need a 4-room or a 5-room. So what we did was that we allowed resale, but we set a limit, which is the 5-year minimum occupation period, because then at least it ensures that you stay there for 5 years. I mean, should we increase that limit? Is there more that we should do? I mean, those are some of the suggestions that have come up. That's something that we could look at, but we have increased the limit in one particular case, and that is for the prime location housing. These are the HDB flats which are built in the prime areas where you would expect that the prices would be a lot more. And because the prices are a lot more, the government gives much more subsidies in order to make it affordable. But if that's the case, what you don't want is a scenario where people buy and then hope at the end of 5 years, I make a killing on the market, right? I just sell it and I get this huge windfall. So for that one, we've put in place a minimum occupation period of 10 years so that it really, if you are serious about wanting a home and you really want your home in this prime location, then you have to stay with it for 10 years. So this is like an example of one of the restrictions that we put in, or conditions that we put in to deter people using the flats as investment. This is not to say though that there won't be an investment effect when you finally do sell, but at least you try and calibrate it and make sure that there is a balance. Should we put more restrictions? Well, that's something we can always look at and see, but you also have to bear in mind that people also need some flexibility. The question is, where do you find that right balance?
But because of that, right, so recently I think we are no stranger to PSP's recent calls for the housing reset and all that. And they've talked about how affordability and accessibility is available, but not at the same time. If I want better affordability, right, I have to choose it in an area that is not mature, which may be seen as less accessible.
If you think about our non-mature estates, actually the amenities are pretty good. Then they may not be quite the same as the mature ones, but you still have access to buses, you still have access to trains. It really depends on what the needs are for the moment. But I would say that if you need a flat, non-mature estate is your chances of getting it within 3 tries.
But it makes sense. It's like private market also. Like the way how property prices work is that if there's more amenities and it's a little bit more mature, it's going to be more expensive anyway.
Our non-mature estates are maturing. Very
exactly.
quickly.
No. I feel like I don't want to like rant too much, but I feel like it's people, if they're complaining about the prices or they're complaining that there's not enough flats, it's that they're just too picky and they want to be in a mature estate. And there's all these homes out there. I'm assuming there's all these homes out there at the non-mature estates that are just ready and up for grabs or ready to be BTO'd, but like no one's
Actually, it's true.
them.
I have stats on that.
I read an article about how I think Asia One started listing down already all the affected neighborhoods in Tengah that will be 1 km within the new ACS.
So now Tengah is going to be the hot place lah.
I think so.
So
It
actually,
went from like oh so far to like hey, let's all go there.
Oh my god, this is like how they did the MRT. You know, like the back down Benny, all that stuff, right? Then, so in the old MRT, when you go in, then the pole is like right in the middle. Then everyone crowd there.
Yeah.
So then they remove that pole and then move it in so that people will crowd there instead. And that's what they have done to ACS.
I wasn't sure where the energy was going.
Yeah, the correct one, right?
ACS is the pole.
ACS is
It's in pole position.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like this wasn't the first time that a school actually has been moved to like kind of make a neighborhood more attractive.
Oh, what?
Like apparently
No. I don't. We don't move schools to make
This was not
neighborhoods
a scheme, it wasn't a measure, but it's not the first time that a school has moved and subsequently made
And
a
the
neighborhood
consequence of it was
more popular. So apparently in
Treading
Sengkang, because I'm like tested, right? There was a school called and I need to like say this properly because Nan Chiao.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah, so like they moved and apparently that the area became a lot more popular because of it.
I just figured out the word you're trying to avoid. So something that was quite interesting that I read was also that from HDB's past BTO sales launches, right? After they get the chance to pick the flat, 4 out of 10 applicants actually choose not to select a flat because either their preferred units are not available or they want to apply for other areas or they want to change to opt for a resale flat instead.
Picky.
No, but you pointed out something that is really important, because what happens is that when you have people who join the queue who don't actually take up the flat in the end, you actually prevent everybody else further down along the queue from having a chance at getting that flat. Right. And that's also a phenomenon that has been happening. I mean, I don't know the reasons why they do that, but it's just try my luck and then I get this one, but actually I don't really want this one. I would prefer another one, which I can understand from the individual perspective, but the only problem is it then ends up depriving all the others in the queue. So that's something else we have to manage as well.
Which I believe there's like if you choose not to, you can't apply for a BTO again for after like 1
that's
year.
about a year.
So they actually turned me off because like so my fiance and I think we applied for a BTO at Sengkang like 2017 I think, and then we were number 400 out of 600. Which means that 400 people get to go before us, and it's along the river, so it's really nice. Everyone wants the river facing one. So by the time it was our turn 400, right, all of it was gone. Like only like second floor left, which you can't see the river because there's trees. So like we honestly thought like, wow, should we just like apply for something else? And then the 1 year one like just turned us off and we went, okay lah, never mind.
Like you mentioned, right, you went to pick Sengkang and then you actually got the ballot on the first try.
Yeah.
So Jared also got
I bought a
BTO.
resale.
Oh, you bought resale. I'm so sorry.
So I've
Which
actually received quite a lot of support from the government.
You got the resale housing grant lah.
Yeah, I got about, I think I was calculating yesterday again because I moved in 2021 in Pasir Ris. I had 70k in grants.
Okay.
Yeah, so I bought it at, should I say the price?
I think it's okay.
I bought it at 398.
Hey, that's for Pasir Ris, that's not bad.
Wait, how many rooms?
3 room.
That's not bad.
But top floor. The things I took into consideration when my wife and I were looking for our house is, I think there were just 2 very important things that we wanted to focus on. One is
Childbearing.
no.
This guy has no intentions of.
So the thing.
What?
Sorry.
What?
I'm not gonna push the antinatalism thing.
Don't forget my other portfolio is marriage and parenthood.
that's
and
why.
then
You see, you open up a can of worms, bro.
we will have a separate conversation after
We
this.
will after.
Yes.
Talk to me after
Okay,
this
go to
already,
remedial after this.
Yeah.
So
What
what
I brought it up.
I think what we wanted is actually very common in terms of what people are looking for. Number one is location. We wanted something that was close to the MRT lah.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you also want to be like close to your parents?
Yeah, so I've been living in Pasir Ris my entire life, and I
Okay.
somehow managed to convince my wife to move from Jurong to Pasir Ris.
Oh my god, that's
Okay.
a massive sacrifice.
No, you just say Changi Airport is 10 minutes drive.
That's
and
where
then
the
can
red
already.
jungle file are in
Yeah.
Pasir Ris Park.
And I think another thing we wanted to take into consideration was cost lah. So these are very common things that most people are thinking of. But we chose a 3 room because we could have afforded a 4 room flats with the assistance of the grants and all that kind of stuff. But I think what we didn't want to fall into is to kind of go into debt longer than we had to lah.
That makes a lot of sense.
And
buy
actually-
according to budget.
Yeah, the location stuff also. I think what's interesting is that we went to see a few houses, like obviously as one does when buying a house. You don't just buy the first one that you see. There was another 4 room flat in Pasir Ris where it was huge. There's all those older flats, and it was huge. I think it could have been like 1.5 times the size of my current house.
Like a 5 room.
Yeah, and the price is the same
Oh.
as this 3 room,
But further from MRT.
but further from MRT. So. And then then the renovation costs will go up because you're gonna have to build more stuff. So
Harder to clean.
harder to clean. So
Okay.
yeah, I think
That's a very valid consideration.
not bad, right? My considerations. Yeah. So asking the minister. Then are my choices prudent?
So whilst we're on the topic of the resale grants, right? So I thought should just mention that actually HDB provides up to about 160,000 for resale
Yeah,
grants.
I didn't receive
for
the
first timers.
maximum.
No, you won't get the maximum depending on your situation
Yeah.
and what you need. But
Household income and all
basically,
that,
you
yeah.
break it down. There's the CPF housing grant for resale flats that's up to 50,000. Then you've got the enhanced CPF housing grant of up to 80,000, and then you've got the proximity housing grant of up to 30,000. That's the one to let you live near your parents. So it depends.
Within-
Sometimes you have a combination of them.
Yeah, within 4 kilometers. And if you stay with your parents, it's 30k. If you don't stay with your parents,
Yeah.
See, he's got it down pat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was so annoyed, but like fair enough, right? Because it needs to be to a T. But like my fiance's parents and our BTO, right, is like 4.5 or 4.6, I think, or maybe 5. I think it was 5.
We had to decide how to
Yeah,
do the
of
cutoff.
course.
Every number that you take, there's always
Correct.
another 0.5.
Correct.
but you got BTO, right? Wait, or resale?
Video.
No, I thought proximity is also.
Proximity is only for resale.
resale, yeah.
Okay lah. Okay. Okay. I
It's
don't
for,
feel so
it's,
bad
it's
now.
for resale because when we developed that policy, we realized that there were a lot of people who wanted to apply for resale because they wanted to live near their parents, but there were some affordability issues. So that's why we came up with the proximity housing grant.
But how do you all decide, like, if you are this income level, you get this amount of grant, then this income level, then this is your number?
I mean, basically, the rule of thumb is that for those who earn less, you try to help more. I mean, that's how it works out.
Right.
lah. And then you just peg it accordingly.
What I think is very helpful. It's not that we're really gaming the system because I think it's by design of sorts, but you can help to debunk that, right? Because when young couples BTO early, they're obviously earning a lot less than by the time the flat is ready. Like when my fiance and I met, we probably applied for our BTO when we were 2 years into our relationship. Now we're like 7 years into our relationship, right? When we're getting married this year, we were to buy a house this year, we wouldn't have saved as much as we would have as opposed to like buying the BTO early enough. and then using that household income that we had back then for like the grants and things like that. So it's actually very helpful by the time the house is ready for us.
I think that's a consequence of the design, but I think the key thing is that at the point that you apply for it, you already have to start looking at whether you can afford it, what your finances are, because you shouldn't apply not being able to afford and then hope that by the time it's ready, somehow things will happen. And HDB will normally walk you through that process.
Okay.
That actually leads me to my next comment. So. This person is asking if the BTO is undersubscribed, does it then mean that the government will not build that BTO? But if they're going to build it regardless of the subscription, then why not just build everything else first also, so that couples no need to wait 5 years to start a family?
That's a really good question, because right
Whoever
now,
you are.
No username. Sorry.
there's this whole discussion thing of why don't you build ahead of demand? So that first time was interesting, because you said, what happens if you build a BTO that is undersubscribed? The whole point of building a BTO is so that it won't be undersubscribed, because it's built to order. So you are pretty sure that when you build it, it is subscribed.
Right.
And the reason why we did that was because there was a time when we were building, basically assessing what the demand might be, and then we ran into a problem because there was an oversupply at one stage.
Yep.
And that led to a whole round of other issues. So that's how the BTO scheme came into place, but it's supplemented by the sale of balanced flats, and of course you have the resale market as well.
Which is actually really useful now. If I'm not mistaken, like sale of balance, there was also cycles for it, but now you can kind of go online and like apply for it now, which makes it a lot easier to fill up if there is an under demand, if ever lah. No, but I was going to go back to like the previous one, right? I feel like it's a tip. It's not endorsed by MND or minister. If you're in a relationship where you know that it's going the distance, apply early, because likelihood, right, your household income is less, and so you get more grants.
No, it is a valid point in the sense that when you apply early and both of you are earning a certain amount, by the time it's ready, then usually your income will increase over time and your circumstances get better, and then you're in a much better financial position by the time the flat's ready.
Yes.
Generally speaking.
Yeah, exactly that. And you're also like, hey, home. Thank you, past self.
Like what Dan said, right? Asking couples to apply earlier, but a lot of couples are actually running into a problem where they halfway through something doesn't work out, and then they run into a whole slew of other problems, and then they are in a sense blaming the building period because it's so long, right? And then so many variables could happen in between. So is there a solution to that?
I think the key thing about that really is that you should only apply for a flat when you're pretty sure that you want to be together as a couple. This is not to say that things may not go wrong along the road, but by and large, I mean, it shouldn't be the flat that drives your relationship, right? It should be the question of whether your relationship is strong, you really want to spend the rest of your life with this person, then you apply for the flat.
Don't blame the house for your relationship issues.
But I can understand why some may feel that way. It's because I'm so afraid that there won't be a house for us by the time we get married. But coming back to the original conversation about the housing supply, we're back on track. The initial crunch was due to COVID. We're slowly sorting that out. In fact, we're accelerating the process of sorting that out. We're back on track, about 23,000 flats for this year, and prepared to go up to 100,000 flats between 2020 to 2025.
Okay.
So you're averaging more than 20,000 flats per year, and that's not a small number.
But if I can ask, right, is it not a bit of like a vicious spiral? Because like while couples are waiting for their BTO, if they don't want to live with their parents in that period of time, right, then they have to go out to rent a flat. Then by like renting, then the supply of flats also goes down. Then it also drives the prices of resale up. Then is it not like a spiral?
Prior to COVID, before the surge in demand, and it's still ongoing, we do have the provisional housing scheme, meaning that when you're waiting for your BTO, you can actually rent from HDB. It's just that in the last few years, because the BTO thing was backlogged, then obviously there was a surge of demand of that as well. But once the BTO start to come on stream, I think that will hopefully be normalized, and then people can apply for that, the provisional housing, whilst they're waiting for their BTO flats.
Anyway, to wrap things up, in conclusion, it feels as though many people have been complaining about housing prices, but actually the options are there. They are affordable. It's just that I think we're just a little bit too fussy over where we want to choose to live. Maybe not. Minister didn't say that. MND did say that.
No, I would put it this way. I think that there is a bit of a crunch at the moment, primarily because of COVID, which held up the housing construction schedule. But that is being ironed out. And there are also other issues which we're addressing. So, bit by bit, as the song says, we will get there.
Stephanie Sun.
That song.
Deep
Okay,
in
yeah.
my
So we've come to the end of the episode. Thank you very much to MND and also Minister Indranee for coming down and sharing with us all these answers to our burning questions. For more information about housing affordability, accessibility, land costs and housing subsidies, check out all the links that we are throwing in the description down below. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye. Like, share and subscribe. Like when you go jogging, right? Do people recognize you? Then after that, they stop you and want to ask you about policies.
Not about policies. It's usually for picture.
Oh,
So it's like, okay, can we? I'm puffing and panting along, right? It's like, okay, can we take a selfie? It's like, yes, all right. Then the next one.
You ever say no or not?
No lah.
You
of
ever
course.
like you see people right, and then you roughly know they're going to ask you for something, so you take the longer route. Like,
Have you considered a gym membership?